Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. I know a lot of you use it to help you fall asleep, so before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time you're watching this. Alright, lights off, eyes closed, and let your imagination follow along with the story. This happened about 10 years ago, I think. I was 11 or 12, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. Our house was kind of isolated, not completely out in the middle of nowhere, but there were houses nearby, just a bit further down the road. Back then, my family was going through a rough financial patch, so we didn't have a proper fence or anything. Just a bush fence with a broken little gate leading to the porch before the front door. That's all we could afford. One night, I was playing video games alone with a friend of mine. My sister and parents were out. My friend, a girl, was 3 years older than me, 15 at the time. Our families had been close for ages. She was like a big sister to me. You could say she was babysitting me, I guess. Anyway, she wanted to get some water, and suddenly she came sprinting back to my room, telling me to turn off my gaming console. I asked why she looked so scared, and she shut off my PS2 and the light, whispering for me to stay close to her. I started freaking out, and she told me she'd seen 2 older men outside the house with a camera filming it. We tiptoed around the house in the dark, no lights on, heading to the kitchen to grab a knife. I caught sight of one of the men messing with the door handle, trying to open it. My friend was losing it, watching one guy attempt to pick the lock or something while the other one was nowhere to be seen. Now, my dad had this gun that a close friend had given him. He never used it, didn't even know how, but my friend knew about it. She asked where it was, and I told her it was in my parents' bedroom, up on top of the wardrobe. We crept to their room, and she climbed up, grabbed the gun, and loaded it with 2 or 3 bullets. Out of nowhere, we heard a window shatter. We could hear the other guy clearly, though his voice was muffled, probably because he was wearing a mask. The one who broke the window was talking to the guy at the door, saying, "Get away from the door. I got away inside. Kill the kid and get the girl." At that point, I froze, almost blacked out. My mind went blank. But my friend, she snapped into action, running toward them with my dad's gun, screaming at the top of her lungs, "If any of you bastards hurt Igor or me, I'll shoot your damn balls off." The guy about to climb through the window bolted. My friend unlocked the front door, chased them out to the street, and fired a warning shot into the air. That shot was so loud, our neighborhood was usually dead quiet. She came back inside, called the police, then our families, and we told everyone what happened. The cops said there'd been some break-ins around our area recently, and some families had been hurt, though no one was killed. They figured these guys were amateurs. Days passed, and they might have caught one of them, but the other was never found. Thankfully, I've never gone through anything like that again. I'm a college freshman in the South, and I'm a woman. Before I start this story, here's a quick description of myself. I'm a short, chubby black woman, just under average height at 5 feet 4 inches. This happened when I was working at a rundown gas station across the street from my campus. One night, my boss left me alone because he said he hadn't gotten any sleep, or at least that's what he claimed. It was a slow day, no particular reason, just one of those quiet shifts. I was sitting behind the counter, playing Geometry Dash on my phone. The counter wasn't one of those with thick glass and a speaking tube, just a regular one. I heard the door open, the little bells jingling, and looked up to see a man walk in. He was tall, very skinny, and for some reason, a bit intimidating. I'm not usually one to get scared of people, so when I say he gave off a creepy vibe, I mean it. He was balding with a sad comb-over, wearing a dingy white t-shirt full of holes and dad jeans caked in what looked like dried blood and mud. It seemed like he'd been hunting, but I wasn't sure. His eyes were hollow, empty, but I still put on my southern hospitality smile and said, "Hello, how are you?" He muttered something I couldn't catch and shuffled to the back of the store. I watched him for a bit, but eventually got bored and went back to my game. After a minute of getting annoyed with it, I closed the app and started scrolling through Instagram. When I glanced up, he was standing behind an aisle, just staring at me. Out of reflex, I looked back down at my phone, but something told me to check again. When I did, he was right at the counter, holding a pack of gummy worms and a beer. "Did you find everything okay, sir?" I asked, a little startled but trying to stay calm. He didn't say a word, just dug through his pockets and pulled out a grimy $10 bill. "The total's $5.68, I said, grabbing the money and forcing a smile as I handed him his change. Out of nowhere, he shouted, "I hate all you damn people, you and the damn wetbacks." I was stunned, completely caught off guard by his racist outburst. He kept going, "Oh, you got nothing to say now, huh? You people always got something to say. Never know when to shut your damn mouth. I swear to God, if I could hang you, I would." I gasped, ready to tell him to take his damn gummy worms and beer and get the hell out. But right then, a few college guys burst through the door, startling both of us. He grabbed his stuff and stormed out. One of the guys was someone I knew. He smiled, bringing over some Doritos and an Arizona iced tea. He must have noticed the look on my face because he asked, "You okay?" I shook my head and said, "No, that guy who just left said he wished he could hang me." He started with all this racist crap, and I didn't even do anything. I wasn't crying, just furious. My friend asked if he should go after the guy, but I told him no, I'd be fine. He nodded, asked for pen and paper, and I tore off a piece of receipt paper and handed him the counter pen. "Call me if you need me, though," he said, writing down his number. His friends came up with a bunch of snacks, and then they left. About 2 hours later, my boss and a coworker showed up, meaning my shift was over. I grabbed my stuff, already starting to forget the incident, said goodbye, and began walking across the street. After about a mile, I heard someone yell, "Hey, sir, is there a reason you're here tonight?" I turned to see campus security talking to a lanky man. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I realized it was the same racist guy from the station. His eyes were locked on me, which made my skin crawl. He didn't respond to the security guard, which only made it creepier, so I picked up my pace and headed to my dorm, trying to put it behind me. The next day, I was doing homework at a table in the Union Center, listening to music when the guy I knew sat down. "Hey, I'm so glad you made it back okay," he said, smiling. I nodded, saying, "Yeah, thanks." He sighed and said, "They found some guy on campus last night with a pistol and a hunting knife." My stomach dropped. He continued, "He was this skinny white dude, kept mumbling some pretty racist stuff under his breath, so I thought it might be the guy you told me about." I confirmed it probably was, adding that he'd been following me back to my dorm. My friend was speechless, clearly as shocked as I was. My parents' house is modest but nice for the area it's in, located in the north of England. When they chose the place back in the late 80s, they did so because it backs onto a huge field, a rare patch of greenery in a region where open spaces are hard to come by. At the edge of the field, directly opposite their front door and window, stands a dense line of tall trees. During the day, they make for a beautiful view. At night, though, my parents quickly realized the darkness beyond those trees could feel downright eerie. Not long after they moved in, they were burgled. The police told them the burglars had likely watched the house from that tree line for days, learning their routine and waiting for the right moment to strike, given how well the thieves knew the house's layout. After that, my dad installed a house alarm. In the early 2000s, following a string of local robberies and some trouble with a group of neighborhood kids, he added CCTV and a motion-activated floodlight. The front camera captures their small garden, the dozen or so steps leading to the street, and a good chunk of the road beyond. The floodlight typically kicks on if anyone gets past the halfway point on the steps. I went back to stay with my parents in autumn 2015 while waiting for my new apartment to be ready. They hadn't had issues with those kids in ages, and there had been no recent reports of robberies in the area. It's generally the kind of place where I'd walk at night without a second thought. On my first night there, my dad was at work, and I was watching TV in the front room with my mom. Out of nowhere, there was a loud bang on the front window. I got up, went outside to check, and was annoyed to find the floodlight wasn't working. In front of the window was a big pile of dirt and rocks. Someone had clearly thrown it from the street. I scanned the road and the dark tree line across the field, but saw nothing. You ever get that weird feeling, like someone's watching you, but you can't see them? I couldn't shake it. Back inside, I asked my mom if I should check the CCTV footage. She explained that the system had stopped working years ago, but they'd left the obvious camera housing up as a deterrent. Smart, I thought, but not much help in a situation like this. She also said they'd turned off the floodlight because local cats kept setting it off all night, which wasn't a problem in the living room with the lights on, but was annoying upstairs when they were trying to sleep. The next day, my dad decided it was time to replace the camera, just in case something like this happened again. He went for one with infrared to get a clear view of the garden and street at night. He installed it, hooked it up to a DVR, and set it running that evening. The new camera was tiny, barely noticeable from the street, and mounted on the opposite side of the house from the old, obvious one. Around 11 p.m. on the second night, there was another loud thud against the front window. This time, my dad and I went out to investigate. Again, nothing but a pile of broken rocks and dirt, balled up and thrown. We went back inside, rewound the DVR by about 5 minutes, and watched the footage. There he was, a guy in a hoodie, but pulled up to hide his face. He walked parallel to the house, stopped directly opposite the window, and just stood there, staring at the closed blinds for a solid 30 seconds. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out what we assumed was a clump of dirt, threw it, and sprinted toward the tree line. He slowed down just before disappearing from view, so we figured he was still out there, watching when we stepped outside. My parents had dealt with this kind of nonsense from local kids for years, so they assumed it was just that again. One of those kids, now grown but not exactly matured, still occasionally yelled stuff at them in the street, so he was a prime suspect. They decided to turn the floodlight back on as an extra deterrent. The next day, my dad stopped by the local police station to ask for advice. Since there was no real damage and the footage didn't clearly show a face, the police said there wasn't much they could do, but advised him to keep monitoring and come back if things escalated. That night, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. came and went with no incidents. My mom even commented that whoever it was must have gotten bored and found something better to do. Feeling like the coast was clear, I stepped out for a quick cigarette by the front door, scanning the tree line as best I could in the dark, just in case. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up early and glanced out the bedroom window toward the front garden. The gate leading to the steps was wide open. I couldn't remember if it had been like that the night before. My mom was obsessive about keeping it closed and always griped about the postman leaving it open, so I assumed he was the culprit. But when I got downstairs, there was no mail on the doormat, not exactly proof of anything, but it bugged me enough to check the DVR. I rewound the footage a couple of hours. The gate was open the whole time, with no sign of a postman or anyone else. I kept going. 4 a.m., 2 a.m., midnight, the gate stayed open. When I got back to 11 p.m. the previous night, I noticed a flurry of movement on the recording. I played it from there. The gate was closed at 11 p.m. Around 11:15, headlights appeared from the corner at the end of the street. A large white van slowly pulled into view, slowing down until it stopped right outside the house. Out climbed a guy in a hoodie, put up to cover his face. He reached across to the passenger seat, grabbed a heavy-looking bag, and gently closed the van door. He walked straight to the front gate, lifted it slowly to avoid making noise, and swung it open. He took a few cautious steps down toward the door, paused, looked around to make sure no one was coming, and took a few more steps. He stopped again, clearly satisfied he wouldn't be caught. Unfortunately for him, he took one step too far, hitting the halfway point on the stairs. The floodlight blazed on, lighting up the garden and our uninvited guest. He froze, unsure what to do, then glanced at the bag in his hand and looked up straight at the camera lens. The angle of the floodlight and camera gave a clear view of the bottom half of his face and the big, smug grin plastered across it. Just like that, he turned, strolled back up the steps, and got into his van. The floodlights switched off as he left. Except he didn't leave. I watched the headlights shrink as he reversed back to the end of the street, just within view, then turned off the engine and waited. At this point, I'd completely forgotten the sequence of events from the night before. A chill ran down my spine when I realized I'd stepped outside for that cigarette, obliviously scanning the trees while this guy sat 50 yards to my left, watching me. A few minutes after I went back inside, the headlights flashed on again. The van crept back toward the house, stopped for a second, then pulled away for good. Freaked out, I told my parents and urged my dad to go back to the police, explaining we now had a trespasser. He did, but their response was that the guy was probably just lost and looking for directions. Without a clear ID, they said it was a waste of their time and didn't even want to see the footage. Nice. We kept monitoring the CCTV for the rest of the weeks I was there, but our nighttime visitor never returned. I have no idea what he wanted, why he was watching the house, testing our reactions, or why he targeted us specifically in a row of terraced houses. But after seeing that grin, I'm just glad I didn't step out for that cigarette a few minutes earlier. This happened about 9 years ago when I was 14. My dad's an avid hunter, and while I never really got into it the way he did, I still went with him pretty often. Just getting out into the wilderness was awesome for me. It was the middle of squirrel season, and one afternoon we headed to our campsite to set up and get ready for the next morning. That night, my dad told me he thought I was old enough to hunt on my own. Down here in the South, that's kind of a big deal, like a rite of passage. He said he knew a good spot for me, so the next morning, we took his boat down the bayou from our camp to drop me off. He pulled up to the shore and told me he'd be back in about 2 hours to pick me up. It was still early, the sun barely up, so I stepped off the boat and found a comfortable tree to sit under until it got lighter. I didn't want to risk getting lost in the dark. Once the sun was high enough to see by, I started walking through the woods. Since I wasn't all that into hunting, I wasn't really focused on bagging game. I was just soaking in the experience. I headed north, keeping an eye out for signs of squirrels, shaking branches, broken nuts on the ground, that sort of thing. After a while, I stumbled across a small trail heading east and decided to follow it. When I say trail, I mean a deer path worn down by animals moving through the woods. I walked maybe a mile, picking off a few squirrels along the way. Realizing I'd been out for about 45 minutes, I figured it was time to turn back to where my dad had dropped me off. As I turned around, I noticed another trail branching off into a thicker part of the woods. I hadn't seen it before and normally wouldn't have paid it any mind, except the trees along it had weird symbols carved into them. They reminded me of Nordic runes, but they were way more intricate. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check it out, a dumb move, and to this day, I still don't know why I did it. I've been in the woods my whole life and never felt scared, but being alone out there felt different, and I guess I was a little on edge. The deeper I went down the trail, the more uneasy I got. More trees had those strange symbols, and there was this eerie silence. Normally, you'd hear squirrels or birds, but this part of the woods felt dead. I'd walked about half a mile, by my best guess, when I noticed the trees ahead starting to thin out, the light breaking through. I knew that meant a clearing was coming up. I wish I'd never stepped into that clearing. What I found still haunts me. It was obviously man-made. The ground was disturbed, trees had been cut down, and the stumps cleared away. The trees surrounding the clearing were covered in those same symbols. In the center was a massive stump, maybe 5 feet across. On it was a dog, or maybe a coyote, its skin stripped off, stomach sliced open, intestines spilling out onto the stump and some trailing onto the ground. I wasn't immediately grossed out. I'd cleaned game before, so I was used to that kind of sight. But I'd never seen a dog like that. I got closer to take a better look, and what really got to me was how fresh it was. There were no flies around the carcass, and I know from experience what a freshly gutted animal smells like. This was it. It was a cold October morning, and I could still feel heat rising from its body. I started looking around the stump, not sure what I was searching for. That's when I saw the footprints, tons of them, circling the stump. Nearby was a knife with a fancy, decorative handle. Then I felt it. Someone or something was watching me. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't want to give whatever did this a reason to come after me. So, trying to act as casual as possible, I turned around and headed out of the clearing, glancing at the trees like I didn't care, pretending I was just going back to hunting. It must have worked, because I made it back to the main trail without incident. As soon as I did, I booked it back to the spot where my dad was picking me up, facing the woods with my shotgun ready, just in case. I never told my dad about it. He'd probably think I was making it up to mess with him. But I did tell my grandfather, who who spent decades in those woods. After hearing my story, he said something in French I didn't understand, then warned me never to go back to that part of the woods. He also said that if I hadn't been carrying a gun, I might not be here to tell the story. He refused to say anything more, and I've never gone back to that spot since. A couple of years ago, I was living with my partner at the time, who's now my ex. We'd been watching TV, and I started feeling sleepy, so I decided to head to the bedroom for a nap. As I began to drift off, I became aware of a pair of eyes watching me through a crack in the bedroom door. I couldn't make out anything else, just those eyes. The hallway beyond was pretty dark, so half asleep, I assumed it was my partner standing in the shadows, messing with me. I chuckled and mumbled a lazy piss off before turning over to sleep. But I could still feel those eyes on me, and now I was getting annoyed. Without turning back, I said loudly that I wasn't in the mood for jokes and just wanted to be left alone. After a few seconds, I heard the door creak open a bit more. Still groggy, I rolled over and let loose a string of curses at the door. It was halfway open now, filled with the blackness of the hallway. There at normal head height were those eyes again, and below them a wide, toothy grin, not a friendly one either. It was fixed, like a skull's, and the eyes were unblinking, creepy. Thinking my partner was just being a jerk, I drifted back to sleep. When I woke up not long after, the door was still half open, and the eyes and grin were still there. I was about to launch into an epic rant when I heard my partner sneeze from the living room, through the wall connecting it to the bedroom. It wasn't him standing in the doorway. I freaked out, rolling off the bed and onto the floor in a panic. By the time I pulled myself up to peek over the edge of the bed, the door was still half open, but no one was there. My partner wandered in, looking confused, and asked what the hell I was doing making so much noise. I explained everything at 100 miles an hour, eventually calming down. We searched the entire apartment top to bottom, but found nothing. I barely slept that night, mostly sitting in the dark, watching the door to make sure it wouldn't open again. A friend later told me it was probably just a hallucination, something that can happen when your body's transitioning between sleep states, like with sleep paralysis. Some people get vivid hallucinations or sensory illusions. After that, I laughed it off and even gave the imaginary figure a nickname, Smiler. But a week or so ago, I was chatting with a neighbor in the apartment building's lobby. He mentioned he'd recently caught our mutual landlady letting herself into his place one afternoon, claiming it was a random spot check, which is totally illegal. Another neighbor said they'd seen her letting herself into my apartment while I was out, taking her time in there. Now I'm not so sure it was all in my head. I've tried complaining to the property management agency, but without hard evidence, it's tough to prove anything. These days, I keep my keys turned in the door lock whenever I'm home, and I've got a camera watching the place when I'm out. So far, nothing's happened. My first babysitting gig almost got me and the kids killed, all because of one stupid mistake. I was 14, and this happened during the summer of 2014. I'd known these kids and their parents practically my whole life. Our neighborhood was tight-knit, and our parents often hung out together. I still remember that night clearly, even years later, and it still scares the hell out of me. Our parents were going out to a fancy, adults-only restaurant to celebrate my mom's birthday with the kids' parents. They said they'd be back around 11 p.m. and reminded me to lock the doors. The family had 3 kids, Haley, Alex, and Madison. Haley, the oldest, was 12, almost 13. I know it sounds weird that I was babysitting someone just 2 years younger than me, but Haley wasn't exactly trustworthy. Her friends were a bad influence. Alex, the middle child and only boy, was usually pretty chill, mostly into video games and keeping to himself. Madison, the youngest, was about 6 and easily the toughest to handle. She didn't listen, tried to act older than she was, swore, refused to sleep, and had even stolen stuff from her school more than once. Our parents left around 7 p.m., and I thought this was a sweet deal since I was close with the kids. They were usually fine with me, except for Madison and sometimes Haley, so I figured it'd be an easy $60. Boy, was I wrong. It turned out to be the most terrifying night of my life. As soon as their parents left, Madison wanted to play outside. I trusted Alex to stay inside, but Haley was known for having friends over and getting into stuff she shouldn't, like her mom's wine, her dad's cigarettes, or even finding a credit card when she was 8. So I told Haley to come outside with us. She did, but immediately announced she was going to the store and walked off. I started to chase her, but then Madison wandered toward the road, so I yelled at Haley better be back soon, or I'd call her parents. I got Madison into the garden, and we played with her dolls for a bit. I checked on Alex a couple of times, and he was fine. Haley eventually came back, but surprise, she hadn't gone to the store. Instead, she brought her friend Jess. They went inside, and we played with the dolls for maybe 10 more minutes. That's when I made the biggest mistake of my life, mostly because of Madison. This guy stopped his car right in their driveway and asked if we were okay outside by ourselves. I had no idea why he singled us out. There were probably 20 other kids playing outside at the time. I told him we weren't alone, that our parents were inside, but of course Madison blurted out, "No, they're actually out at dinner." The guy smiled, told us to have a good night, be safe, and not stay out past dark, all that creepy stuff before driving off. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was weird that he picked us out of all the kids, but I chalked it up to him being overly concerned. His car looked normal, and he didn't seem like a child killer or anything. Still, I was mad at Madison and reminded her about stranger danger, but she just called me a jerk and acted like it was no big deal. That pissed me off. She didn't get what she'd done wrong, so I made her come inside with me. Haley and Jess surprisingly didn't raid the wine, and Alex was fine, so I sat Madison down in the living room, and we watched TV for a while. It was around 9 p.m., so I told Madison it was time to get ready for bed. She threw a fit and ran into the backyard. When I went to grab her, I noticed a light in the woods behind the house. I thought it might be kids playing, but now I'm convinced it was something much worse. I finally got Madison into bed and started reading her a story. She actually calmed down when I read to her, so I kept going, hoping she'd fall asleep. She did, so I checked on Haley and Jess, who wouldn't open their door. Alex was still in the basement playing on their Xbox or PlayStation, so I went down and made him come upstairs to do something else. He was cool about it and didn't complain, so he started watching TV. I was finally starting to relax, doing my own thing in another room, when Alex said someone was at the back door, claiming to be the pizza guy. I went to check, and there was a man there. I'm not 100% sure it was the same guy from earlier, but come on, who else would know we were home alone? I still didn't clock that he was bad news, so I asked why he was at the back door. He said he didn't see the front door, an obvious lie, but I didn't call him out. I told him to wait, went upstairs, and yelled at Haley for ordering pizza without my permission. She opened the door, said she didn't order anything, and slammed it shut. Haley lied a lot, but I could usually tell, and for some reason, I believed her this time. I went back down to tell the guy he had the wrong house, but Alex said he bolted as soon as I went upstairs. I figured he realized his mistake and was embarrassed, so I let Alex go back to his game. He was thrilled and ran back to the basement. Right after, there was a knock at the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw the guy standing there, holding no pizza box, wearing no delivery uniform. I didn't notice it then, but I later realized this when telling my hysterical parents and the police. "Sorry, dude, you got the wrong house," I said through the door. I started walking back to the living room when he said, "No, this is the right house." The little redhead ordered it. Looking back, I should have known something was off right then. How would he know Madison had red hair from a phone call? She was a weird kid, but I don't think she'd randomly tell someone that. I still didn't connect him to the guy from earlier, maybe because he'd changed his look or I just wasn't thinking straight, but all I could focus on was Madison. I ran upstairs to yell at her for ordering pizza, staying up, and somehow getting a phone. But when I got to her room, she was still asleep. I thought she was faking it, so I woke her up. She called me a jerk again and swore she hadn't ordered anything. I couldn't find a phone in her room, so I dropped it. She wouldn't go back to bed, so I said she could watch TV with me. I know. I'm a terrible babysitter. We went downstairs, and I went to tell the pizza guy it was still the wrong house, but he was gone again. I didn't think much of it, and we got Alex up from the basement to watch TV with us. Thank God we did. It might have saved his life. We were watching TV when Alex said he heard something in the basement. I paused the show, and he was right. There was something down there. I told the kids to stay put in case it was a wild animal and went to open the basement door. What I saw still haunts me. At the bottom of the stairs was a man holding a knife, slowly creeping up toward the door, toward me and the kids. He froze when he saw me, then started running. I screamed, slammed the door, and locked it just before he reached the top. He started pounding on it, yelling something I couldn't make out. I was screaming now, and Alex came running in with Madison behind him, asking what is happening. I grabbed them both without explaining and ran upstairs to Haley's room. She must have heard the commotion and my crying because she didn't hesitate to open the door this time. She slammed it shut and locked it as I blurted out what was happening between sobs. Haley, Jess, Alex, and Madison were all crying and panicking now. We ran into a closet and locked it, hoping it'd buy us time, but it was damn terrifying. Being stuck in a small, dark space, knowing you could die any minute, no one should have to go through that. It was the scariest half hour of my life. We were all quietly sobbing, hearing pounding downstairs, then it suddenly stopped. That made us even more scared, thinking he'd broken in and was coming for us. But it was actually the kids' parents coming home. The guy must have heard them and realized he couldn't take them all on, so he ran off into the night. They didn't see him or even know about him until we told them what happened. They were screaming our names when they saw the busted-down basement door and the trashed living room and kitchen. He'd torn the place apart looking for us. If they'd come home any later, I might not be here to tell this story. They never caught the guy. That sick bastard got away. I only babysat a couple more times after that. I had severe paranoia that he'd come back for me, had nervous breakdowns more than once, and had to leave mid-gig. He never came back, but for a long time, I was convinced surviving that night was a fluke, and he'd come to finish the job. Please, anyone reading this, drill stranger danger into your kids' heads. Lock your doors and windows, because you never know what could happen. I'm a 29-year-old guy from England. Near the end of August 2014, I was out with some friends at a bar to celebrate my birthday. It was late in the night, and we decided it was time to head home after nearly 8 hours of drinking. We were on the first floor of the bar, and my friends went down the staircase to the main doors ahead of me. For reasons my drunken brain has since forgotten, I thought it'd be a great idea to take a shortcut off the stage next to the stairs. I figured it was a short drop to the ground, but it was more like 5 or 6 feet. I landed with my legs straight, knees locked, and snap. I knew instantly something was seriously wrong. A 999 call and a surprisingly calm ambulance ride later, I was at the hospital, dosed up on gas and air. After an x-ray, they confirmed I'd broken both my legs. My right foot pointing downward instead of up was a dead giveaway, but my heart sank when the doctor said I'd need to be admitted for corrective surgery in a couple of days. By now, they'd given me a good dose of morphine, and I was still huffing gas and air like a pro, so I was pretty out of it. A porter wheeled me up to the ward, where a nurse explained I'd be in a men's ward because they'd separated genders the previous day. I thought it was odd she mentioned that. Shouldn't that be standard? But even high on pain meds, I didn't dwell on it. She set me up in a room right by the ward entrance. My bed, one of 5, next to the shared toilet and shower room. It was around 5 a.m., and the place was dark and quiet. As the nurse went through the admittance process, I vaguely noticed a guy in the bed opposite, awake and sitting up, watching me being brought in. Unlike the others, who were asleep, he was alert. I couldn't see his face, but his patchy white hair caught the moonlight streaming through the windows, so I figured he was older. What struck me was how still he was, just sitting there like a statue. No movement, no sound, completely focused on me. Before the nurse left, I asked her to draw the curtain around my bed to block his view, and eventually I drifted off. The next day, I woke to find my parents by my bedside, chatting with a guy from the bed opposite like they were old friends. I'm not exactly a people person, and given I was in a foul mood for obvious reasons, I was annoyed they were letting a total stranger hover over me while I was out cold. They didn't know he'd creeped me out the night before, though. He introduced himself. Let's call him Mick. He seemed friendly enough, one of those harmless old guys who comes off as lonely and eager to talk to anyone. He was in his early 70s, short, round, and in the ward for a fractured collarbone from a fall. When he finally wandered off, my parents said he seemed nice, just happy to have new people to chat with. That day, my parents left, and the doctors came by to fit me with splints before my surgery, scheduled for day 3. They made it clear I'd be in the hospital for at least a week and wouldn't walk for months. Not what I wanted to hear. During these talks, Mick lingered nearby, eavesdropping. When the doctors left, he came to my bedside, sat in the chair next to me, and asked me to repeat what they'd said. I wasn't in the mood to talk, but since I'd pegged him as harmless, I asked why he needed to know when he'd been standing just a few feet away and must have heard it all. The second I said that, his whole vibe changed. The sweet old man was gone. His face went blank, like it had flattened out, and he fixed me with a weird stare, one corner of his mouth curling into a lopsided grin. "My wife just died, he said. I'm terrible with emotional conversations, especially about death, so I stammered out something like, "I'm so sorry," and asked how long it had been, assuming from the odd grin it was a while. "About 3 weeks. Just like that, gone. His face didn't change, and he never broke eye contact, just staring with that creepy half-smile. It hit me, he might not be all there mentally. Thankfully, the nurses came in to serve dinner, and Mick retreated to his bed. He watched TV the rest of the day, and I put my iPod on to avoid talking. I figured he was just a bit off, too weird for me to deal with. When lights out came, I asked the nurses to draw my curtains again. Despite the pain, I fell asleep early. I woke up in the early hours, one of those slow awakenings where you sense something's wrong but can't place it. The ward was almost pitch black, especially around my bed with the curtains drawn. I chalked the feeling up to being in a hospital with 2 shattered legs and turned my head to the left. Then I nearly rolled off the bed in shock. Standing inside my curtains, right next to me, was Mick, just watching me. I blurted out something dumb like, "Is this how you sleep?" Same blank stare, same creepy half-smile, barely a foot from my face. I thought he might be sleepwalking, but there was no glazed look. He seemed fully alert, just content to stand there staring. "Mick, how long you been there?" I asked, feeling a chill that only comes when something really freaks you out. Instead of answering, he grinned wider, showing both rows of teeth, then shuffled back around a curtain to his bed. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, knowing he was still in the room and I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't say anything to the nurses, but I texted some friends visiting the next day to watch out for him. When they came, Mick stayed away and seemed like a normal old guy, so I started thinking I'd overreacted, maybe because of the unfamiliar setting. That day, I had my surgery and came to about 6 hours later, hooked to a morphine pump, hands down the best medical invention ever. I was completely loopy all evening. In such a great mood I forgot about Mick. Big mistake. In the early hours, I was playing a game on my phone, oblivious. The nurses checking on me kept disturbing the curtains, leaving a 6-inch gap right opposite Mick's bed. Mick was a loud snorer, so I was reassured by the noise that he was asleep. But then I realized the snoring had stopped, and I couldn't recall when. I looked at the gap but couldn't see anything. Just as I was about to go back to my game, I heard my name, not said normally, but groaned low, gravelly, and menacing from just left of the gap. I froze. What you do when a pensioner gets out of bed in the middle of the night to mess with you. I was immobile, hooked to and for, legs in heavy bandages. I couldn't confront him or leave. I slowly reached for the nurse call button. Just as my hand got there, the groaning stopped. Had he seen me and gone back to bed? Nope, he was still there. After about 30 seconds, heavy breathing started, long rasping inhales followed by groaning exhales, over and over, right at the foot of my bed. That was my limit. I hit the call button, the light went on, and I heard the buzzer at the nurse's station. There was a burst of movement behind the curtains, and the nearby toilet door quickly opened and closed. A nurse responded soon after. Mick was still in the toilet, but I beckoned her closer to whisper what happened, including the previous night, and asked if something could be done. She nodded and said she'd be back. While she was gone, Mick came out of the toilet and climbed back into bed. The nurse had closed my curtains fully, so he couldn't see me. When she returned, I expected to be moved, but instead, she said I couldn't have a sleeping pill because of the morphine. I calmly explained I hadn't asked for a pill, I wanted something done about Mick. She shrugged, said the wards were full, told me to rest, and left. I didn't sleep for hours. Mick's snoring eventually resumed, and exhaustion finally got me, so I cautiously drifted off. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Mick made small talk, which I barely responded to, and he left me alone. That afternoon, a younger guy, 18 but looked 12, was admitted with a broken leg. Suddenly, he became Mick's new focus. I felt bad for the kid, but relieved I might finally get a break. That night, I slept okay until 3 a.m. when I woke to a weird sensation on my left foot, where the toes poked out of the bandages. My eyes adjusted, and there was Mick, inside my curtains again, playing with my toes, running his fingers along them, pinching, moving them around, like he wanted me to wake up and see. But he wasn't looking at my feet. He was staring me dead in the eyes, unblinking, grinning. I'd love to say I lost it, called the nurses, and got him moved, but my brain froze. I just sat there, mouth open, watching as he kept messing with my toes. I think it was disbelief mixed with fear. He was 40 years older, but I was trapped in that bed at his mercy and didn't want to piss him off. Eventually, he got bored, disappeared behind the curtains, and went back to his bed. I stayed awake the rest of the night, waiting for him to come back. He didn't, but every so often, I heard my name groaned low and long. By morning, I was furious and terrified, Ascot. I was a mix of terrified and angry. I'm not someone who plays the victim easily, so I hated how this old man had turned me into a paranoid wreck. Every time he got up to stretch or get water, my body tensed, expecting him to come back to my bed. He didn't, though, focusing his creepy attention on the new guy instead. That afternoon, Mick was called for a scan. While he was gone, I talked to the other 3 guys in the ward about him. None had noticed his nightly visits. They were doped up on pain meds too. One guy who'd been there longer said he wasn't sure why the wards were split by gender, just that something happened one night, and the next morning, men and women were separated. I had a pretty good guess what that something was. When Mick returned, he glumly announced he'd been cleared to go home, with an ambulance booked to take him in a couple of hours. He said goodbye to everyone, leaving me for last. Look after those legs in the future. They're fragile things, he said. I gave a half smile and cursed with English politeness, wished him well, thinking that was the end of it. I picked up a magazine to read, but then I felt pressure on my left foot. I looked up, ready to yell, and saw Mick's hand clamped around it, squeezing so hard his knuckles were white. The break on that leg was higher up, so it didn't hurt the fracture, but the grip was intense. With that creepy half smile, before I could react, he leaned in and said in that same raspy voice, "Very, very fragile." He let go, turned, and shuffled back to his bed to pack. A couple of hours later, he was gone. Before I was discharged, I told the nurses everything, but they didn't seem to care much, dismissing it as partly drug-induced or just a misunderstanding. I don't think about Mick too often now that I'm back on my feet and life's mostly normal. But every so often, when a twinge in my legs wakes me at night, I remember those weeks in the hospital and make a quiet promise to myself to never end up back there again. My name's John, and I was 16 when this happened, right in the thick of my junior year. I'm of Asian descent and nearsighted, so anything more than a few inches from my face is a blur. This all kicked off in my homeroom with Mrs. H, my history teacher. She was in her 30s but looked way older, like life had worn her down. I had her class every second period. First period had just ended, and I was strolling into homeroom. I headed to my seat. I spotted this skinny kid with black hair sitting there. "You the new kid?" I asked. "Yeah, name's Kyle," he said. "Cool, I'm John. No offense, but you're in my seat. Could you move?" He gave me this pouty look, like a kid who didn't get his way, but he got up and plopped into the seat behind me. Guy smelled like he hadn't showered in days. I sat down and class started. Mrs. H announced we had a project on famous landmarks and their purposes. It was a partner deal, and guess who I got stuck with? Kyle. Great. Not only was I sure this was going to tank my grade, but it meant one of us had to go to the other's house. I wasn't thrilled about some random dude coming over, and I sure as hell didn't want to go to his place either. So, like an idiot, I gave him my number. Things were fine for a couple of days. Nothing weird, except that creepy look he gave me when I asked him to move. But then, this one afternoon, shit hit the fan. We just finished some writing for the project, 2 pages each, planning to cherry-pick the best bits and mash them together. This was a few hours ago. My parents were out at dinner, and I was home alone, messing around on my computer. Suddenly, I heard glass shattering from the basement. Weird, since I was on the 2nd floor. Being the coward I am, I paused my game and listened, not sure what I was waiting for. 5 minutes of silence later, I started playing again. Then, a minute later, I heard the basement door creak open. I've got a cat, but she was curled up on my bed, so it wasn't her. I muted my computer, turned off the monitor, and grabbed the landline in my room, my dad's old office phone. I dialed 911, my hand shaking, and told the operator what was going on. She said she'd send an officer. Then I heard it, soft footsteps creeping up the stairs. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably 3 minutes before I heard sirens. I was so relieved I could have cried. That is, until my bedroom door slammed open. I could barely see without my glasses, just a shadowy figure in the doorway. The sirens got closer, and the streetlights flashed through my window, giving me just enough light to see Kyle's face. Same damn pouty expression from that first day. He didn't spot me, just bolted to the closet across from me and hid inside. I was scared shitless, frozen in place. It was maybe 30 seconds of pitch black silence, except for the faint glow of streetlights. Then the door burst open again, and a cop rushed in, flipping on the light. "You okay?" he asked. I screamed my lungs out, sobbing and pointing at the closet. "He's in there. He's in there." The cop yanked the closet door open, and Kyle lunged at him. Lucky for the cop, he was quick with the taser, and Kyle hit the floor. I was a mess, barely able to explain what happened. Later, I asked the cop why they got there so fast just on a suspicion. He said the operator heard another phone click after I hung up, like someone else was listening in. I turned in the project a week later. Took some time off school and stayed at my grandparents' place to calm down. Got it though. Small win, I guess. This happened last year when I was 17, so let me set the scene. I went to a well-known private school in Australia, was pretty popular, and played sports at a high level. One of my best mates was Sam, who was basically a legend in our city among kids our age. Tall, good-looking, killer at sports, guy could have had any girl he wanted. Most dudes liked him too. He was just a solid, genuine guy. Sam's 18th birthday was coming up, and we just finished a grueling set of exams. To celebrate, we decided to hit the city for a night out. Legal drinking age is 18, but we had fake IDs. Sam, me, and another friend, Tim, went together. It was a Saturday night, 10 p.m., and Tim drove, staying sober so he could get us home. We ended up at this big club, posted up at the bar, having some drinks and catching up with friends we ran into. Sam's ex-girlfriend was there with her new boyfriend, all on good terms. I spotted a girl I liked, so I left Sam and Tim at the bar to go dance with her. By then, we'd each had about 5 drinks. After maybe 20 minutes, I wandered back to check on Sam. He was hammered, slurring his words, laughing too loud, slouched over the bar. This was weird because Sam's a big guy and usually holds his liquor like a champ. I figured he might have done something stupid while I was gone, but when I asked, he swore he hadn't had much more to drink. As we talked, he got sloppier, like he was falling apart. Eventually, he was so sick I had to drag him to the bathroom to puke. I was getting worried. He could barely walk and was talking nonsense. After cleaning him up, I helped him back out and started looking for Tim to drive him home. As we stumbled through the dance floor, this girl came up to us, acting all concerned about Sam. I didn't know her. She was tall, skinny, looked a few years older. Said she was a family friend of Sam's and offered to take him home. Sam seemed to recognize her, and when I asked if he was cool going with her, he mumbled a yeah. I was a bit tipsy myself and had no reason to think she was lying, so I said goodbye and went back to dancing. Later, I ran into Tim, and when he asked where Sam was, I told him about the girl. He thought it was sketchy and called Sam to make sure he got home safe. Sam picked up, said hello, But then the line went static and cut off. We were both like, okay, something's not right. We tried calling again, no answer. About 10 minutes later, Tim got a text with Sam's location pinned on Apple Maps, followed by another text saying, "Come pick me up." We bolted to Tim's car and sped to the address, maybe 10 minutes away. When we pulled up, Sam stumbled out onto the street, looking like hell. We helped him into the car and peeled out of there. Once he sobered up a bit, Sam pieced together what happened. He said he suddenly felt out of it at the club, sick and disoriented, even though he hadn't drunk much more. His memory was spotty after that. When the girl approached us, he was so out of it he thought she was my friend, someone I'd asked to drive him home, not a family friend like she told me. She took him to her house and deadbolted the door so he couldn't leave. When Tim called, she snatched Sam's phone. A few minutes later, Sam's head cleared enough for him to realize how messed up the situation was. He grabbed his phone back, turned it on, and texted us his location. When he asked her for the address, she wouldn't tell him, so he sent the pin. After we texted that we were outside, he told her, "My friends are here, I gotta go." She must have realized she'd be in deep shit if we came inside and saw what was going on, so she let him leave. Our theory: this girl drugged Sam and tried to take advantage of him. But there's stuff we still don't get. Why take him to her own house, then let him go so easily? Now we know where she lives. Who was she? We'd never seen her before and haven't since. Why didn't she try anything with him at her place? Sam said she just left him on a couch until Tim called. How'd she drug him? The first time we saw her was when she approached us on the dance floor. No one noticed her earlier. And why kidnap him at all? She was older, pretty attractive from what we could tell. Sam probably would have gone home with her willingly, without any of this weird shit. We didn't go to the police for a few reasons. We'd be screwing ourselves, underage drinking, fake IDs, all that. Our school cracked down hard on stuff like this, and if the cops got involved, they'd find out. Drinking could have messed with our spots on high-level sports teams too. Plus, Sam was rattled and embarrassed. Didn't want anyone but close friends knowing. We still talk about that night, trying to make sense of it, but we've never gone back to that house, even though we know where it is. Maybe one day we'll knock on the door. People will warn you about doing business or meeting strangers on Craigslist, or even dating sites, places full of hope that sometimes get twisted by creeps. But this story isn't about any of that. It's worse, tied to a job search right out of college. I've only ever told my girlfriend, and that's because she got dragged into it without meaning to. In college, I spent most of my time partying, squandering a golden opportunity. Lucky for me, I pulled it together in time to get my grades decent enough to graduate. Was I top of my class? Hell no, but a degree's a degree, right? I studied biology. Something about the process of life, especially plant, just fascinated me. After graduation, I was ready to make some cash. But here's the kicker: back in my freshman year, I got a DUI. My school worked hard to hook students up with jobs, but that DUI slammed a lot of doors in my face. With no luck through them, I had to find other ways. My student loans were looming, due in 5 months, so I hit up every job board and search engine I could find. After months of searching pre- and post-graduation, I finally found a posting on Indeed that I knew I was perfect for. It was an entry-level internship for a company looking for someone fresh out of school. The job? Taking seeds and cuttings of vegetables, prepping thousands for mass production and harvest. Looking back, I should have paid more attention. The company's name was just a couple of letters followed by LLC, but I was so desperate for a break I didn't care. When I called, the guy on the phone sounded rushed, like he couldn't wait to get off. All he cared about was when I could meet for an interview. Thinking he was just eager to fill the spot, I naively said I was free anytime. He gave me an address and asked if I could come the next day. I said I'd be there. The next morning, after getting ready, I punched the address into Google Maps. With a few minutes to spare, I switched to satellite view and saw nothing but dirt fields. I figured maybe the image was old, taken in a cold month when nothing was growing, but even then, the land didn't look right for a farm or agricultural site. Still, I ignored the red flags and went anyway. I got there 20 minutes early. My parents always drilled punctuality into me, and thank God for that. I pulled up, shut off my car, and lit a cigarette to calm my nerves before the interview. As I sat there, I took in my surroundings. There was no building, no sign of a company, just a rundown Texas Chainsaw Massacre-looking house and a greenhouse the size of a house that hadn't been touched in a decade. The greenhouse was filthy, like something out of that show Life After People, where they imagined a world without humans. I chuckled about it, but then my eyes drifted to the house. The white, brown-stained curtains twitched slightly. This is where it gets scary. I kept staring at the window, and after a moment, in the bottom left corner, I saw half a face and a single blue eye peering out. My legs turned to jelly, and I knew something was seriously wrong. My heart was pounding, my brain screaming to get out, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from the same number I'd called. "You coming in?" "Be right there," I texted back, trying not to raise suspicion. But I was done. I went to flick my cigarette out the window, and in my side mirror, I saw someone creeping around the back of my car. He had a knife in his hand, and it looked like he was going for my tires, not me. I threw the car into drive, but in my panic, I hit neutral instead and rolled back a couple of feet. I'm pretty sure I ran over his foot or ankle. I yanked the wheel, pulled a U-turn to get back to the one-way entrance, and floored it. As I sped off, I could hear him yelling, "Johnny, my ankle! Johnny, my ankle!" over and over until it faded. These people had my phone number and address from the resume I'd sent through Indeed. My first instinct was to call the cops, but I couldn't. See, in my desperation to get by during my job hunt, I'd started growing weed to make some quick cash. No way was I going to jail over something I hadn't even profited from yet. So I took my chances. For days, I camped out by my window, watching, waiting for them to show up. Nothing happened. Then, about 2 weeks later, I got another text. I was sure it was the same number, and I checked my call log to confirm. It was. The message read, "Since you didn't want to come in, can I come in?" My heart stopped. This guy wasn't letting it go. He and his buddy, or whoever, thought it'd be fun to pay me a visit. My eyes started tearing up, like some primal instinct kicking in, and I wanted to collapse. But I couldn't let my screw-up drag my girlfriend into this. So I came clean to her, told her everything, about the job posting, the creepy house, the guy with a knife, all of it. That night, I noticed an old maroon car parked in the alley behind my place, near the back fence. The area's got a lot of gang and drug activity, so most people know to steer clear at night. From my window, I couldn't see much, just the orange glow of a streetlight hitting the rusty car. Every now and then, I'd catch the ember of whatever he was smoking flare up. He stayed there for hours. Around 2:30 a.m., when the local bars let out, the alley got busier, people looking for a quick score. I saw 4 guys walking toward the car. They stopped like they were planning something, and I could tell they knew this guy didn't belong. One of them went up to the driver's window and started talking. Then, out of nowhere, another guy shot something through the passenger window, and the first guy started swinging. They dragged the man out and beat the hell out of him. His car rolled forward, crashing into a public trash bin and slowly pushing through my neighbor's fence. One of the guys hopped in, and they peeled out, stealing the car. As they drove off, one tossed something at the guy on the ground. I watched him limp away, humiliated and in pain, disappearing into the night. 2 weeks later, we moved. I won't say how long it's been, but I've got a job now, and I'm so damn glad I never have to use Indeed again. Let me start by saying I'm no stranger to the outdoors. Last year, I spent 32 days in the woods scouting, hunting, or fishing. The year before that, it was 22 days. That's not counting my regular hunting and camping trips, which, over the past 3 years, add up to just over 100 days. I've been hunting since I was 9, roaming wild places across the US and Canada. I've seen some weird stuff out there, but this one takes the cake. I was in the North Georgia wilderness, the Chattahoochee National Forest, for a 7-day scouting trip, looking for bears, wild hogs, and deer to prep for a hunting trip later that year. I'd hiked about 10 miles and then went off trail for another 3 to 5 miles. I was deep in the middle of nowhere. Since I was alone, I was using a hammock with a built-in bug net, covered by a rainfly. For 3 days, I camped halfway up a mountain, scoping out good hunting spots. Saw 3 or 4 decent-sized bears, about 10 hogs, and some solid deer. On the 4th day, I planned to head back down to a small stream I'd marked on my GPS, set up camp, restock water, and gear up for the 2-day hike back. As I approached the stream, I spotted a tent. I was stoked, hadn't seen a soul in days, and it's always nice to run into another hiker. But as I got closer, I noticed a small pack on the ground outside the tent. Figured the person couldn't be far, so I set up my camp about 30 yards away. With 4 hours of daylight left, I started cooking dinner. 2 hours later, I was wondering where this person was. This was serious wilderness, a day-plus hike out, so I got curious. I hiked around the side in a circle, looking for signs of a struggle or maybe an injury. Went about a quarter mile out, but found nothing. As night fell, no one showed up. I started a fire, hoping the light would guide them back. Fires burn bright out there and are easy to spot from a distance. After searching, waiting, and hoping, I called it a night. I had a small flask of whiskey, took a couple sips, climbed into my hammock with my pistol, and tried to sleep. I sleep like a rock, no matter where I am. Annoys my friends, honestly, because I can crash anywhere and stay out. But that night was different. Something fell off. I chalked it up to worrying about the missing camper, but still, I couldn't shake it. For the first time in my life, I woke up to a sound, footsteps, but not like someone crunching leaves. It was loud, like a heavy-footed person stomping on an old wooden floor. I grabbed my pistol and headlamp, which I kept in a compartment above me, and waited. The sound stopped. Then I saw something that scared the hell out of me. A faint gleam of a flashlight on my rainfly. Right as I noticed it, it sounded like 10 people suddenly sprinting away in every direction. I dropped out of my hammock, hit the ground, and flicked on my headlamp, shining it everywhere. Nothing. My heart was racing, but I tried to convince myself it was just the moon reflecting on the rainfly, and the running was maybe armadillos or some critter. Problem was, there was no moon, and armadillos aren't that tall. Their eyes glowed too, and I'd have seen them. Then I noticed the other campsite was gone. The fire I'd built was out, not just died down, but doused with water. No coals, nothing. I thought it was maybe 4 a.m., but I'd only been asleep for an hour. I wanted to bolt, but hiking in the dark in the wilderness is a bad call. So I grabbed my flask, took another swig, tore down my rainfly so I could see around me, and tried to go back to sleep. As I lay there, I saw a light hit the trees above me, coming from downstream. I got out of my hammock and yelled, "Hey, you need any help?" No response. The light went out, and whatever it was spun around and booked it downstream fast. My body was pumping more adrenaline than blood by then, and I was wiped out. Somehow I fell back asleep and woke up around 7 a.m. When I did, I saw my water filter was gone. The gravity filter hung on a tree to drip into my water bladder, which was now at the base of the tree, sliced open with a knife. My bear bag with my food had been cut down, and some of it was missing. Worst of all, they'd gone through my backpack, which was under my hammock while I was sleeping. I checked the bear bag before I went back to sleep the second time, and it was still up. My pack hadn't been touched then either. I packed up my stuff and got the hell out of there, keeping my pistol close and moving as fast as I could. I made the hike back in just under 15 hours, even hiking through the night because no way was I staying out there another second. Didn't see a soul on the way out, and there were no cars at the trailhead. The Department of Natural Resources said mine was the only car they'd seen there. I reported everything to them, but they looked at me like I was nuts. Maybe I am. Since then, I don't go out there without friends. I've had some pretty messed up things happen to me in my 20 years, but this one stuck with me like glue. I was about 8 years old, living with my mom, stepdad, and baby brother. One of my oldest brothers was in town for the summer, like he always was, and he brought his new PlayStation for us to mess around with. We were big into gaming, so we turned the guest bedroom into our gaming den for the summer. My brother usually spent a few nights at our cousin's place during his visits, and that's what he'd done the night before this happened. He left the PlayStation behind for me to play. The night prior, I'd fallen asleep in the guest room while gaming. When I woke up, the second my eyes opened, I heard my mom yell, "Nikki, come here." I was groggy, just coming out of sleep and stretched, glancing at the clock. It was about 2 p.m. Mom and I were supposed to head a few hours away to shop and grab dinner, so I figured she was calling me to get ready. As my feet hit the floor, she called again, and I shouted, "Hang on." Our dogs were going nuts outside, barking like crazy, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Before I go on, you need to know something. My stepdad and little brother had left early that morning to go fishing. The only people in the house were me and my mom. I stepped outside to check on the dogs, but didn't see anything unusual. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I heard her again, a bit sharper this time. I started hurrying toward her room, but froze after a few steps. The hallway was dark, and there were no lights on in her room. That seemed off. It must have ticked her off because she yelled again, "Nikki, come here." I started feeling uneasy but took a few cautious steps forward. My eyes locked on the pitch-black hallway in her room. "Mama, are you okay? Is the light out?" I called right before I reached the hall. Now, we're from the South with that sweet Southern drawl, but any trace of sweetness was gone from her voice. "Nikki, come here now. I want to show you something." I was getting scared. Something felt wrong, but I needed to make sure she was okay. She kept repeating herself, each time angrier, her voice dripping with malice. I was about to step into the darkness of her bedroom when I felt something grab my shoulder from behind. A calm, unfamiliar voice whispered in my ear, "Stop. Don't turn around. Go quickly and run." I didn't think twice. I backed up as fast as I could, heart pounding, while whatever was in her room screamed my name in a demonic tone, demanding I come back. The screaming followed me, ringing in my ears, all the way to the front of the house. I clutched my head, terrified I'd go deaf from the noise. When I reached the front door, I turned, slammed it shut, and the screaming stopped. I took a shaky breath, bolted off the porch, and ran sobbing down the road to my grandparents' house. When I got there, I found out my mom had been called into work and wouldn't be home until after 7 p.m. I stayed at my grandparents' until she got back, watching for her car. When I told her what happened, she just hugged me tight. She said she had weird experiences in the house too, like we all had, but nothing this intense. My stepdad still lives there, and I'm always nervous when I visit, especially going near that part of the house. Thankfully, nothing's ever bothered him. I hope it stays that way. My closest friend convinced me to share this as a cautionary tale and to help me process what happened. I'm a 25-year-old woman now, but this took place last year. I just moved into a new neighborhood about an hour from my old place, renting a house with my boyfriend, Andre. It was a beautiful, quiet area, a single-story home facing the road with gorgeous mountains and trails just blocks away. I loved it. Before that, I lived alone in a loft downtown, in a bustling urban area. It was great. Everything was walkable. I could take the train to work, hit up local coffee shops or restaurants. But the space was tiny for the price, and I craved the calm of a more suburban setting. Plus, I had other reasons for wanting out, reasons that went beyond just wanting peace and quiet. I'd never been paranoid, maybe even a bit naive, never thinking I had reason to worry. My old neighborhood was well lit, with cops around often enough. But then things started happening. One night, I was walking my dog, something I did regularly, when this sudden wave of fear hit me, like when you're alone in a dark house and sprint to your room for no reason. I decided to take a shortcut through an alley between some buildings. Stupid move. It was short but dark, littered with trash bins and back doors, but it'd get me home 5 minutes faster. I have a Labrador retriever, and dogs are sharp, picking up on everything. Halfway through the alley, she kept slowing down, looking back. I got scared, yanking her harness and whispering, "Let's go." She's never been aggressive with strangers or weird noises, but she was quietly growling, the hair on her back standing up. As we neared the end of the alley, I glanced back and saw a man in the shadows, holding what looked like a rope wrapped around his hand. I turned the corner and ran. When I got to my apartment, I turned off all the lights and peeked out the window. I was on the top floor of a 12-story building. The man walked up to the entrance, but I lost sight of him once he reached the steps. Then my buzzer went off. I froze, figuring it was best not to answer. He shouted, "I found your wallet." "You dropped it. Can I come up?" I thought, is this guy serious? I never carried a purse or wallet when walking my dog. Just my ID and a card in the zipper pocket of my jacket since I jogged during our walks. This creep was probably trying to rob me. I saw him leave but couldn't get a good look at his face. A few days later, I was on the train, coming home from a late shift. It was 11 p.m. and 2 stops before mine, a man got on and sat right behind me, even though there were at least 24 empty seats. He seemed distracted by his phone, so I didn't think much of it. But when I got home, I freaked out. While putting my hair back to wash my face, I noticed a huge chunk of my long hair was gone, cut bluntly about 5 inches up. That morning, I just brushed it and left it down, so I hadn't noticed. I called Andre, asking if he'd done it as a prank, even though I knew it was a long shot. It had to be the guy on the train, but I hadn't gotten a good look at him either. The feeling of being watched didn't stop. I'd hear footsteps behind me. My buzzer would go off in the middle of the night. I stopped walking at night, then stopped walking altogether, driving to a park a few miles away instead. But things got worse. One night, I found a package outside my door with a note labeled, "All for you." Thinking it was from Andre, I opened it. Inside was a used condom. I called the police, but they said it was probably a prank and there was nothing they could do. I felt helpless, my nerves shot. Andre was worried too, so he started staying over every night, even though he was still paying rent on his own place. The second my lease was up, I bailed. He ended his lease, and we moved in together. Fast forward a month and a half. We had a yard now, so I only took my dog on walks when I was off work, in the morning or afternoon. I'd hit the mountain trails near our new neighborhood, usually with Andre, but if not, I went with a fully charged phone. The trails were close enough to get a signal, though it was sometimes weak. I bought pepper spray and kept it clipped to my backpack. I was starting to feel safe again, thinking the creepy stuff was just some nutcase from my old neighborhood. I was dead wrong. It had been raining all night, but the afternoon was just overcast. I loved the smell of rain, so I took my dog to the trails alone. About an hour in, I heard someone approaching around a bend. The area was popular with rock climbers, runners, and other dog walkers, so I was used to seeing people. My dog was a few yards ahead, but always stayed close. She started running toward me, which she often did playfully, or when she wanted water. I smiled, called to her, and knelt to pet her, but she ran right past me. I turned to make sure she wasn't bothering anyone. She's young and has a bad habit of jumping on strangers and licking them like crazy. She was standing in front of a tall man, just staring up at him. He was white, about 6 feet 6 inches, average looking except for his height, wearing jeans and a dark long-sleeve shirt, not exactly hiking gear. I felt uneasy. "Sorry," I said for no reason, pulling her toward me. I smiled at him and turned to walk away. "Have a good one," I added. But my dog wouldn't budge, and then I heard him say, "Didn't you like my gift, you little bitch?" I froze, terror crawling up my spine. I thought I could run deeper into the mountains, that's miles of nowhere, or try to get past him and run home, also a bad idea. I'm 5 feet 7 inches, 125 pounds, and I've never fought anyone in my life. Before I could decide, he started walking toward me. I let go of my dog, who was growling now, and reached for my pepper spray. As I unclipped it, he lunged. I hit the ground hard, my arm twisted behind me. I felt my shoulder pop in a way it shouldn't. He pinned me with his forearm across my chest, his other hand clamping my mouth shut, thumb digging into my chin. I squirmed, but he was too heavy. My dog was circling, barking, and whining in a high-pitched tone I'd never heard. I prayed someone would hear us. She bit at his back, nipped at his head, but he didn't flinch. She ran up and down the trail, barking louder, confused. Fear kicked my body into survival mode. I thought his weight would crush my ribs. I could barely breathe. My right shoulder was screaming, broken. I kept thinking. He was kissing my face, smelling my hair, muttering things I couldn't make out. I felt his groin pressing against my leg. "Be a good girl for me, okay, baby," he said. I told myself to calm down, to think. My left arm was free. I stopped fighting and felt around for a rock. He loosened his grip on my chest and moved his hand from my mouth. I kept my arm still, hoping he wouldn't notice it was free. "You want it so bad, don't you, baby?" he said, sliding his hand up my shorts, grabbing my hip, burying his face in my neck, licking and groaning. This was my chance. I found a palm-sized rock, sharp enough, and smashed it against the back of his head, rolling as he slid off me. I scrambled on my injured shoulder, crawling through dirt and rocks as fast as I could. He screamed, clutching his head. I ran faster than I thought possible, not looking back. My dog's barking followed me, and I heard another scream from him. I didn't stop, didn't slow to grab my phone from my backpack. It felt like forever, but I made it to the trailhead. My dog was with me, blood on her nose, mouth, and neck. I thought she was hurt. A man was getting out of his car as I reached mine. "Please call the police," I screamed. He looked terrified, pulling out his phone. When he saw my dog, he froze, then looked at me. I checked her for wounds. She was fine. The police found the guy about 2 miles in, sitting in a pool of blood. My dog had torn into his calf, likely stopping him from chasing me. He was arrested and charged, serving 16 months now. They found his car near my home. He'd been stalking me the whole time. The condom gift couldn't be used as evidence, so they couldn't prove the stalking. I'm thankful for my dog and pure luck that I fought back. No one should go through this. We know sick people exist, but we never think we'll cross paths with one. 4 months, I couldn't sleep. My shoulder had torn tissue, making work tough. I hated being alone, but didn't know how to act around people. I was only calm cuddling my dog, watching old shows or movies. Slowly, things got better. I stopped blaming myself for what I could have done differently or thinking I deserved it. I focused on being proud of fighting back and grateful I wasn't raped. I sleep better now, and I've started running again after surgery and rehab. My shoulder's improving. Fear creeps in when I think about his release, but I hope he'll move on. Part of me knows better. I'm moving from the home I loved. I'm getting my master's in English, something I never planned after my bachelor's, so I'm heading to a new state for school. Andre got a job there and is coming with me. He supported me through everything, always understanding. I'm moving forward, not running away. When someone takes something from you, your security, your happiness, any piece of you, the best thing you can do is fight. Never let them break your spirit or soul. Never let anyone define you. Fight with everything you've got. Thanks for listening. I'm a petite 24-year-old woman from the mainland US, but this story happened when I was 19, living in Oahu, Hawaii. The area I lived in was straight up rough. Ghetto doesn't even cover it. Being half white, half Hawaiian, but light-skinned, I was the closest thing to a white person in the whole city. Whenever I told locals where I lived, they'd give me this look, like I was either crazy or lying. That's relevant, I promise. I was staying with my cousins, all locals, and there were no jobs where we lived. To get to work, I had to take 2 buses for an hour each way. This particular day, I was covering a shift for a coworker who had a family emergency. It was a Sunday, my first time working one, from 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. No big deal, right? The bus stop was right by my workplace, and buses ran until midnight. Except I was wrong, buses stopped at 10 p.m. on Sundays. So there I was, standing alone at the stop for 40 minutes as businesses around me closed and it got darker. I started to panic. The streets were empty except for the occasional hooker or junkie wandering around, looking for dark alleys or their next hit of crystal meth. Hawaii at night, outside of Waikiki or the North Shore, in no paradise, it's scary as hell. Out of nowhere, this toothless, homeless meth head pops up and says, "Hey, buses don't run this late. You better start walking your skinny ass home." I realized how screwed I was. My neighborhood was dangerous. No way I was walking through Kaimuki Park alone at night. I checked my wallet and found one of my cousins had borrowed my last $50, leaving me just enough for the bus that wasn't coming. No cash for a cab. To top it off, my phone was dead because some big shot GM was at work that day. so I couldn't charge it at my cashier station and didn't trust leaving it in the break room. I was having a full-on internal meltdown when a taxi pulled up, windows down. "Sorry, man, I'd love a ride, but I got no cash," I told the driver. He looked at me, glanced around, and said, "Well, where you need to go? I can't leave you here knowing I'll see you on the 5 o'clock news or something." I told him my neighborhood, and he did a double take but shrugged and motioned for me to get in the back. I was so relieved I ignored the bad feeling in my gut. I'd only been in Hawaii for 2 months, and my luck had been awful, so I thought, finally, things are turning around. Nope, I was wrong. I hopped in, gave him cross streets near my house. Thank God I couldn't remember my exact address, and said I'd get his number to pay him later. The first 20 minutes of the ride were normal. Then he started asking weird questions. "How old are you? You a virgin? You married? Got a gun in that big purse?" I lied, said I had a gun, starting to feel creeped out. He went quiet for a bit until he noticed he was almost out of gas. I looked at the gauge. He wasn't lying. We pulled into a gas station, but instead of parking by a pump, he parked behind the building near a dumpster. "I'm going to pay for gas and grab a snack, then I'll take you back," he said. I started to say I needed to get home, but he cut me off. "You're riding for free. Let me eat my damn snack." I thought, well, okay, and considered bolting when he left, but I had no clue where I was or how to get home. Instead, I reached into the front and unlocked all the doors while he was gone. It was an older car, so I knew they'd stay unlocked unless he manually locked them again. He came back empty-handed, no snack. I thought, am I the damn snack? He got in, opened the center console, and pulled out a meth pipe, baggie of meth, a weed pipe, some weed, and a lighter. "Let me have my snack, then we can go," he said. He packed the meth pipe, took a few hits, and blew the smoke at me, then offered it. "I'm good for now, thanks," I said. He looked pissed but put it down, grabbed the weed pipe, and went through the same routine. I was seconds from running when he threw the car in reverse and peeled out, without pumping any gas. Now he's driving 70 miles per hour in a 30 miles per hour zone, high as a kite, taking hits off the meth pipe. I was freaking out, but the scenery started looking familiar. We were about 5 minutes from my house. I checked the doors, still unlocked. His hand was creeping toward my knee, his eyes on me, not the road. Moaning like touching my thigh was the best thing ever. "We're gonna have fun tonight, baby. I'll teach you how to party." I said I wasn't interested, and he just laughed. "Your phone's dead. Who you gonna call Ghostbusters? We're in Kalihi, girl." His hand was on my leg, and he took a left, away from my street. I knew I was in deep shit, but I stayed oddly calm and switched tactics. "Look, if I don't check in, they'll come looking for me. I'm down to party, but I gotta check in first. I'm a little white girl. If I don't get home, they'll check my work, and my coworkers saw me leave with you. I don't want you getting in trouble. You know how white people are." I was banking on him not knowing my family wasn't white, hoping he was high enough to buy my bluff, and that he hadn't noticed all my coworkers were gone when we left. He gave me a weird look, then handed me the meth pipe. "Okay, girl, let's party." I held it to my lips, waiting for him to look at the road, and mimicked what he did, turning it side to side while lighting it. I made a tiny bit of smoke, didn't inhale, and blew it out fast, praying I wouldn't get high or ever have to explain meth in my system. "You're burning it," he snapped, grabbing the pipe. "Wasting my damn dinner. I'll show you how it's done." He took a hard right, heading toward the cross streets I'd given him. My vision was a little off, everything too bright, my adrenaline feeling almost euphoric. Was I high? Shit. My street wraps around a hill, about a mile wide, and the cross streets were a quarter mile from my house. As we got close, he slowed, asking which house was mine. I lied, saying, "I can't tell, it's so dark. I just moved here, and the houses all look the same. Plus, I'm high. Can you slow down?" He dropped to about 5 miles per hour, and I made my move. I swung the door open and jumped out of the moving car, hitting the dirt sidewalk like I was flying. I got up and ran, arms flailing, looking like a lunatic but not caring. I didn't look back. My oldest cousin, 39 and built like a Samoan tank, was at home. If I could just get there, I'd be safe. Since the driver had turned, we passed my house, so he'd have to drive to the next driveway to turn around on the narrow road. Plus, he was at the bottom of the hill, so he couldn't see which house I ran to. No headlights followed, good sign. I sprinted into my front yard, unlocked the door, relocked it, and slid to the floor, a shaking, crying mess. I peeked out the front window. No one on the street, no cab, nothing. I was safe, I thought. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Every time something bad went down, I got the same lecture. You were acting like some dumb college white girl. If you were smarter, but things seemed okay. I switched to day shifts, avoided being alone or near that bus stop, and life moved on. About a week later, I noticed a black car with tinted windows parked a few houses down. I thought it was a neighbor's friend, but it was there the next day, and the next. I asked my cousin's 17-year-old son if he'd seen it. He said it showed up around 6 p.m. every day, right when I got home from work. I started freaking out. Finally, I broke down and told my giant cousin everything, leaving out the meth part. Surprisingly, he didn't lecture me. He felt bad I hadn't come to him sooner, apologized for giving me a hard time about being from the mainland, and said he'd handle the car. The next day, his son picked me up from the bus stop near our house on his moped. We saw the black car following but acted like we didn't. We pulled up to the house, and as soon as the car parked, out came my cousin, swinging a metal baseball bat like he was warming up for a game. The car reversed halfway down the street, hit a fence, jumped the curb, turned around in a front yard, and was gone for good.